by the way, they almost certainly are illegal. And by the way, the rule against receiving presents from foreign governments is in the Constitution. The president is not allowed to accept a gift from a foreign government without the consent of Congress.
Conservative writer David Frum was a guest on Piers Morgan's show, Piers Morgan Uncensored, to talk about the legality of Trump being involved in the war between Israel and Iran and other things, illegal things that Donald Trump and his administration are doing. We're going to take a look at these clips of David Frum with some really excellent points, despite the fact that he's a conservative, on Piers Morgan's show. I'm going to share my thoughts as well. Let's check it out together.
Why should Donald Trump not now get the Nobel Peace Prize?
There are two truths we have to keep in mind, and they're kind of opposite, but the test of our acuity, or maybe even of our democratic survival, is holding both of these things in our minds. The first is that the action that the president took to strike the Iranian nuclear program at a moment when, thanks to Israeli ingenuity and daring, it could be done, which has not been the case before, that was a necessary and correct act, and I salute him for it. At the same time, that while we hope that this war is over, it may not be. While we hope the program is over, it may not be. And Donald Trump now becomes a more dangerous threat to American democracy because he still does not respect the due process rights of citizens, the free speech rights, democratic elections, and basic rules about honest government and conflict of interest and not taking massive handouts from persons all over the world undisclosed to the United States people.
Now think of the insanity of Donald Trump getting the Nobel Peace Prize. You know, he bombed Iran, a country that didn't invade the United States, hasn't attacked the United States, is no real threat to the United States. Israel and Netanyahu have claimed for 30 years or so that Iran is mere minutes away from developing nuclear weapons, nuclear bombs, nuclear missiles. It remains to be seen what will happen with this ongoing war between Israel and Iran. So I don't know how you would, wait until the end of this guy's four-year term if he hopefully leaves at the end of that. Why would there be any calls right now from Piers Morgan or anybody else to give Donald Trump the Nobel Peace Prize? It's nuts.
With Trump, why are you so scared about him and the potential threat to democracy?
His attempted coup failed in 2021. That's true because he made a mistake. He thought you could overthrow an election with a disorganized mob. And that turned out not to be true. As you say, the American state is powerful. This time around, he's learned his lesson. And he is federalizing the military. He has a military presence in the state of California without the request of the state government. That's unprecedented since the end of armed resistance to civil rights laws in the 1960s. When the courts say you cannot withhold due process rights after litigating something that no previous president would ever think to try to litigate, he says yes, but people around him are saying, we're not sure we have to respect the due process rights.
Yeah, but he is abiding by it. And we are seeing some of these decisions being reversed. We're seeing people who were deported returning. In other words, Trump will always push it to get what he wants. But if ultimately he faces a court order to bring them back, it's happening.
Yeah, but this is kind of to borrow a phrase from the George W. Bush administration, which I served, the soft bigotry of low expectations. So congratulations, Mr. President, that when your attempt to do something illegal, immoral, unethical, unconstitutional is struck down by 3 levels of appeal, you don't at that point do what you're doing in the state of California and call out the troops. Congratulations. But actually, you know what the real test for a president is? You're supposed to obey the law automatically. It's not supposed to be something you litigate.
That's not true.
So we're going to see what Piers Morgan says here, but it's not true that the president has to obey the law. Imagine a regular citizen, and I know that a regular citizen is not exactly like the president. I know there's different criteria there. But Donald Trump really is the first president we've ever had. We've had presidents break laws, but we've never had somebody do what Donald Trump has done and just go in and say, I'm the president, I'm going to do whatever I want. And maybe the courts will stop me, maybe they won't. So for Piers Morgan to act like it's okay that Donald Trump just breaks the law is insane. But imagine if just a regular person, say somebody went into a store and stole some bread, and then they go back to the store and return it. They say, I stole this, but I decided to return it. They would probably still call the police, and they would get arrested for breaking the law. I mean, isn't that essentially what's happening here? Well, they knew it was illegal to remove people from the country with no due process and send them to a concentration camp. But then when the courts say you can't do that, and then they bring them back and they say, well, we brought them back. So does it just no harm, no foul? I mean, it's just ridiculous on Piers Morgan's part to not understand that the president of the United States with a team of lawyers wouldn't know that these various acts are illegal.
The reason John Adams' prayer, "Let none but wise and honest men rule under this roof," is inscribed in the White House over a mantelpiece, is because the presidency is so powerful that it's not much of a comfort to say, after the president has taken a series of bribes and it's litigated, until it is proven that these things are illegal, he will continue. By the way, they almost certainly are illegal. And by the way, the rule against receiving presents from foreign governments is in the Constitution. The president is not allowed to accept a gift from a foreign government without the consent of Congress. And this gift from the government of Qatar may be a gift, it may be extorted. It's not clear whether the Qataris wanted to do it. This is massively unconstitutional and also illegal because there are conflict of interest laws and gift laws.
And another really good point that David Frum is making here, that again, this is just unprecedented to have a president receiving this kind of potential bribe from a foreign government. And, look at how the right-wingers, MAGA, and Donald Trump, I mean, they're still talking about it with Joe Biden out of office, how they went nuts over Hunter Biden and some of the shady deals that he did. But those were very small amounts compared to what's happening with Donald Trump, with this, very, very expensive plane from Qatar and other gifts that he's gotten. And, to not even say anything about the meme coins and all of that Donald Trump is into. Anything that's happened under previous presidents was peanuts compared to the type of bribery and using the office to profit. We've seen presidents cash in after they get out of office, but Donald Trump has just completely skipped that step, and he's cashing in while he's there. But again, Piers Morgan is going to make excuses at every instance for Donald Trump. He does it all the time on his show. And Piers Morgan does not make those type of excuses for any Democrat, whether it's Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or the next Democratic candidate that we'll have for president here in a few years. Piers Morgan is not going to give them any benefit of the doubt, and he constantly does this with Donald Trump. Yet, Piers Morgan talks all the time about how he's not a right-winger, and it's laughable that anybody would say that he's on the right wing, and people in England don't believe that, blah, blah, blah. But he certainly seems to simp a lot for Donald Trump and MAGA. But let me know what you think about all this. I just showed you some short clips here. That's what I have to do with dealing with Piers Morgan videos. But let me know what you think about what David Frum had to say here on Piers Morgan Show. Make sure to give me a like and subscribe. I'm Chris on Culture, and I will see you in the next video.